Alright guys, another NFP, 20 minutes away now. So, little update since we didn't do a stream yesterday. We had a massive sell-off in the pound. Now, this is a little bit surprising. You know, there wasn't much expectation for this meeting from Carney and yesterday, and you know, some of the takeaway from it is that basically they shut the door on any sort of rate hike this year. Or really they tried to. Now this is a little surprising to some, and you know, this recovery rally that the pound was enjoying was tentative, right? It wasn't really fully fleshed out. It's not like we got above 130 or anything, or there was substantially good news, you know, like an announcement of a trade deal or anything along those lines. I mean, they still haven't really triggered Article 50 yet, and there's no sort of sense of progress towards a deal with EU, or even this type of deal they're going to get. I mean, it's still so much up in the air. So any sort of recovery here is, you know, sort of needs fresh news to help it, and this sort of cutting the legs underneath it does threaten it. Now, I'm not so sure that we're going back to 120, but it definitely wouldn't surprise me, and it's not like I'm too eager at these levels and this particular dip to be looking to buy the pound. This is on the, you know, with the backdrop of the NFP tonight as well. You know, the chances of US dollar strength is pretty real here. You know, the ADP was very strong, and so, and the NFP in general has been beating expectations or at expectations for a long time, last 6 months, and there's no real indication that it's going to slow down tonight. So it's really hard to come in here expecting for some really weak data. So imagine if we're looking at this chart next week and the, you know, pound is at 123.50. You know, this whole chart's going to look very different, and the whole sort of this recovery rally will look very tenuous. And you know, I'm just don't want to get involved in that, right? So while I'm a bit of a bull on the pound, the main way that we were trading is short euro pound, but I've actually stepped out of those trades now. They were doing very nicely down at 85. I held them into the MPCs. Quite, I mean, hindsight, it was quite silly. And I cut them at 87, 85, 80 actually today. So I took a little bit of a loss on it, but it's not like I don't want to sell euro pound. It's just, if the market wants to rally, let it rally. You know, if the pound wants to sell off, let it sell off. You can do the same trade again and again. It's not a big deal. There is no hurry. There is no hurry at all. There's sometimes a little bit of an urgency with traders if they're, you know, trading in their first year. Like, you know, we have to find that excellent new trade. You sit and wait. A lot of the time, patience is really important here to make sure that you get those good entries, no matter what you're planning to do. So it could have been, you know, planning to sell the Aussie. Look, that 77 is probably a decent level, but there's no reason to suggest we're going back below 76. If we hold 76 today, even with a strong US number, probably we would be testing 77 again, and maybe 77.50. So if you really want to be lying in wait here to be selling the Aussie, I mean, I'm not sure that this is enough confirmation for you to hop in. And really nice levels to up top. Why not just wait and see if we get those? You know, let this one go. See if we get another rally in the next week or so up to 77.50. In this particular case, it's a bad example because I suspect we are going back lower, and I suspect the RBA is going to be dovish next Tuesday. So, you know, this will be probably a really strong potential here for the market to break low. Is it dropping out, or is it okay? Look, it should be fine from my end, Freddie. I can see there's zero dropped rates. So there's no, you know, there should be no reason unless there's a YouTube issue. Yeah, so the Aussie dollar is, you know, I'm not really a fan of selling against the trend, and the Aussie dollar is in a really strong uptrend. Just as circumstantial timing here is that the NFP is coming out, and the RBA is next Tuesday, and with that low CPI number, I think there could be the chance that we come away with the door open to the RBA cutting rates, and that would, you know, put the Aussie back at 75, and so there's a little bit of risk reward here, but it's yeah, just in general, right? If you're waiting for levels, you've got to be really patient sometimes. Now, with this patience argument, we have been patient with the dollar yen, and I think it is time to make a move here in the dollar yen. So that 112.50 a couple of weeks ago was the sort of level that we were looking at, and it held a couple of times. Then we had a little bit more negative news from Trump. Market came down, tested 112, then tested 112 again. It wouldn't take much here to turn this, and it wouldn't take much here for the upper end of this new range to be tested, which is 115. And that's really the sort of angle and target I'm hitting for here. Now, for the last couple of NFPs that we've been doing live, we've been talking about dollar yen. Now, dollar yen is the most responsive to NFP numbers, and given that we've already had a pullback and the US dollar's on the back foot, the market really wants to buy dollar yen if it's given the green light, and US yields are strong. You know, there's a bit of a compelling argument here that dollar yen's a little undervalued at these levels, and that if, you know, all it takes is a little bit less concern about Trump and a little bit more focus on the US economy and the differential between the US Fed and the BOJ, which was highlighted today. They're a little bit sneaky, the Japanese. They came out with an unexpected bond auction today, and it was unlimited purchasing of, I think it was 5 and 7 years. But what the effect was the 10-year was yield dropped down. So when, you know, we've been looking at this 10-year in the US yields, and we've been talking about how important the US yields are and how they're an indicator of what's going on in with the US dollar. But the thing that we didn't touch on too much is that not only is the US 10-year yield chart important, but the every other country's 10-year yield is very important. It's just that the US yields have been rallying, and some of the other yields have not been rallying, right? And that basically the ECB is keeping the yields low in Europe, and the BOJ is keeping yields low in Japan. So when US yields rally, the gap between the two, which is the, you know, the really important thing, that increases. So that's really what underpins the dollar yen rally. And what you're seeing with the Japanese auction today is the government, so the BOJ coming in and saying they're going to buy unlimited amounts, push the yield back to I believe it's 0.15, and the Japanese have a target of 0.1 on the 10-year, and that's in contrast to 2.4. And so the US yields have been as high as 2.5, 2.54 a few weeks ago. They've been toying with this 2.5 level for a little while. A strong number today probably is going to push that yield above 2.5, and that would really, you know, signal another catalyst that this dollar yen is undervalued here, and the risks are really to the top side, not just for the 115 but potentially 116, 117. Yeah, everyone is, you know, the Bank of Japan's going one way, the Fed's going the other. So unless it's surprisingly negative data, I don't think you're going to. I think it's hard to envisage too much more severe dollar yen downside, unless, you know, so this whole Trump issue gets out of hand. Now, I don't know really how Trump's going to play out, right? That's a really big question mark, I think, on everyone's mind. The protectionist sort of rhetoric he's going with, he's anti-trade with Mexico, and he's, you know, ripping up the TPP, and, you know, ostensibly he's going to come after Japan, he's going to come after China at some point. So far he's left them alone a little bit. If he does come after these countries, then we're going to see some more volatility and probably dollar yen downside. So there is a little bit of a ticking time bomb in regards to our long dollar yen trades. If Trump gets, if it gets the attention of Trump, you know, what could it be? Just maybe he's bloody, you know, reading the paper in the morning. You know, dollar yen testing 116, 117. You know, that's that could be, you know, the sort of the catalyst that gets him to come out and tweet something like, you know, BOJ, no, Japan keeping their currency weak to beat us in cars, unacceptable. We'll be talking to them Monday. You know, stuff like that, right? Literally, that just literally we could hear that on Monday. So we have to keep that under consideration a little bit. He has the ability to turn stock markets down, sentiment down, and dollar yen down. Now he does have the ability also to lift things up. But he hasn't really been doing too much of that. Now, the way he lifts up the market is if he talks about tax cuts and fiscal spending, and that would put more pressure on the US to raise rates. We haven't got too much focus on that yet, but that could also happen as well. There's not just a downside risk with Trump, but those downside risks with Trump are increasing, is another point I have to make, right? If you told me that this is what his first couple of weeks were going to be like, I'd be like, oh wow, I thought he was going to do better than this. And so, you know, to me, it seems almost a matter of time before there's a major issue. Not if there's going to be an issue. There's going to be a big issue. Someone's going to challenge him, and he's not going to back down. And that's, you know, we're going to see really how that unfolds. But that's another side point. That's just, you know, you got to keep this in the back of your mind when you're trading dollar yen, because dollar yen's so sensitive to risk on, risk off trade. And right now, you know, we haven't had a big pullback in stock markets for a long time. We had a couple of day pullback this week on the back of Trump. Markets recovered from this 19.8 level. And a strong number today is probably pushing us back above 20,000. And that's another reason. I mean, if you're sitting here in an hour's time and dollar you know, the Dow is above 20,000, dollar yen is going to be, you know, testing 114 probably. Okay, that's just the way that this is all connected up. So, you know, keep an eye on the Dow Jones or the S&P, whatever your fancy is, because an hour after the NFP, the US stock market's open, and sometimes there's a little bit of a discrepancy between the initial reaction when the data comes out with the numbers, and the dollar yen movement. Alright, so this particular time, I don't actually mind buying a little early. Alright, now, I don't recommend you follow this particular trade, but it is in 8 minutes and the numbers come out. I just think the risks here are skewed enough that I want to be in early. It's pretty easy to place your stop as well. Okay. I will be playing it by ear. I'm not going to be placing a stop. I'm going to just close it out if I don't like the price action on the market afterwards. It's not as simple as good number dollar yen up. Right? That's definitely not the case here. There has been a lot of residual sell the rally on dollar yen. So you know how NFP, nearly 50-60% of them, they have whips, which means the market goes initially up and then down. In this particular case as well, I'm very hesitant that a medium-sized number or a half-decent number won't get a sustained rally. So I'll be watching for signs of that, and I'll be taking profit a bit earlier than expected, than usual, if that happens, and I'll be sitting to the sideline. So this is really a dynamic sort of trade here. I'm not really, that's why I'm a little hesitant if we just straight up follow. But if you do follow, you can just basically do what I do in the next couple of minutes, right? And you know, don't sue me if I'm wrong. It's always a risk in the market, especially a big announcement like this. And usually actually we trade after the announcement, but this particular one, I think the risk is really skewed to the top side here. In terms of the take profit, I will just put one here. Now there is a chance that the numbers come in a little bit weak and we get a little game of buy the dip. The dip should be bought similar to the lows in Asia today. I'd be surprised if a medium weak number, so the market, even though it's expecting 175, because of the strong the strong ADP number, it's probably going, you know, the number to impress the street would probably have to be above 200,000. You know, you won't get impressed from a 170 number. In fact, a 170 probably immediate US dollar weakness. And then the secondary numbers are, you know, you have to look at the average earnings They're a bit more important than the unemployment rate, and that's just a sign of wage pressure, which is a little bit of a form of inflation, and the Fed pays attention to it, so you got to pay attention to it. I don't know if the pound's the best one to sell. I think euro is a better sell than the pound if you want to play against the US dollar. Alright, but let's just quickly, in the last couple of minutes, have a look at some research. I don't want you to be completely blinded by my rant here on the long dollar yen. Alright, with AMFX. Alright, so this guy's pretty good, right? I don't think the numbers matter all that much. What's more important is Trump on, Trump off. Alright, so he's grouped it pretty cleanly here. Tax reform, infrastructure is what you need to hear a bit. Border tax a little bit. Stuff which will get the market selling. Trade war. Concerns, yeah, I mean even in Australia, we saw that yesterday. Yeah, and China's a big one that really hasn't been addressed at all. That's a really big one actually. When that happens, because it has to happen at some point. Yeah, that's been. Also, every time they reiterate that he wants a weak US dollar, you see about 30-40 pip move on the dollar yen down. At some point, the market will stop listening to this, right? Because you can't keep crying wolf. It's not like they're going to intervene, but it is important to keep an eye on just his feel. This is Barclays NFP preview. Forecasting 175. See, the averages have been so strong. The numbers have been beating really consistently. Been above 150 for 6 months now. Alright, 2 minutes. Quickly UBS open. That 108, 108.30 level is held now pretty strong on the euro. So those levels were well known back at 105. We were talking about them back then. So this is interesting that they're holding. Same with dollar yen, 112, 111.50 were really big levels, and they've held as well. So this is getting some notice in the market. Sellers, who are basically the enemies of us, right? The buyers, they have to take note of this. If they don't get help from the NFP or help from Trump, they give up a little bit, wait for 115 to sell again. That's a very standard sort of maneuver that would happen. One minute. Alright, so the plan here is to be long dollar yen into the announcement. First time we've gone long into an announcement in the last 6 months. Actually had a trade on into the announcement. Now, depending on the price action, we may be closing this out early, and we may be buying more on the dip if it's a semi-weak number, but nothing crazy. Mainly because risks here are skewed to the top side because of the Bank of Japan's actions today, where they did a surprise move on the bond market. So even buying a dip here on a slightly weaker number, 170, 160, 150 is decent. 10 seconds. Another interesting. Stronger than expected, but the market's not reacting at all well. Average earnings a week. They may run into that. Unemployment rate ticked higher. Just going to close that. That's not the price action I want. Now I might get back in a sec, but that's really good numbers, and the market was set up to rally. It should have been fine here. This is not good. We'll see. US stocks now are important to watch. US stocks are strong, so this helps us buy dollar yen. Just want to make sure that the bottom's in. So we're keeping an eye on the euro, keeping an eye on the dollar yen here together at the same time. If stocks remain strong, then we can go back into the dollar yen. I might be buying back again, Ryan. I just want to make sure that that it's done. US yields are falling sharply. It's a bit of a battle here between US yields and risk on from the stock market. Stops coming. Stops are coming. Oh, this is disappointing. Disappointing. Whipsaw is likely. Whipsaw is likely. Just want to check that this. Had enough dollar yen? Is that it? Is that it? Alright, so what we're seeing here is basically I wanted to check whether it's going to break the previous 112 support from Asia today. So far it seems okay. If it breaks, I'm going to have to close again. Just because, you know, this sort of market, you might get a bigger move during the day than you want. Try not to lose too much when you're wrong, right? That's an important point. I think these charts are delayed. So the thing that's dragging the dollar yen down is a little disappointment with the average earnings, and the US yields dropped pretty quickly. But they have bounced a little bit, and US stocks are strong, so I don't mind getting back into this dollar yen. It's still a little bit dangerous. You've got to keep an eye on it. This might be the first loss we've had in doing this stream, guys, for a while. The NFP stream's been very lucky to us. We've got to get our monies back. So this week hasn't been great. But we did do okay the week before. That's Aussie dollar's outperforming. Hard to keep it down with risk on. I'm thinking about a stop around 112.40 here. Yeah, the other two news is making it go down. That's right, Vector. But it's not that bad, right? It's a bit of a mix, and I expect the US dollar would do okay at the end of the day, but that could be wrong, right? So it's about a lot about trading is not losing too much when you're wrong. We may have to wait till the start of the US session here to see how the Dow opens. If it can get above 20,000, I suspect the dollar yen will win this battle. If it can't get above 20,000, dollar yen may go back to the downside. But I wouldn't be chasing US dollar weakness here, just at these levels. A little too close for the euro, right? You're buying into some pretty strong resistance up towards that 108. So there is a chance it fails again. The dollar yen as well, selling anything below 112 is pretty dangerous. It doesn't mean you have to buy, right? It just means it's dangerous to sort of keep on following that US dollar weakness trend. Alright guys, we have in a couple of minutes, we have Jason and Andrew are going to be doing a stream on how President Trump's going to affect the markets. So that's a really interesting topic. I'll be sticking around to watch that. In regards to our dollar yen little trade we got going on here, a lot is dependent on the US yields and the Dow Jones, right? How strong the Dow is today. It's definitely not a lock, and it's we're sort of buying into a dip. So you got to be a little bit, have a little bit of faith in this sort of uptrend to keep holding it into the weekend. If you do hold any trade over the weekend, just be aware of the Trump risk. But I'll be back here on Monday at 9 GMT, normal time. we'll go over the follow through or the lack of follow through in the US dollar. If you do want to put a stop in on this trade, then you can put just below the Asian low. Okay, and that when if you're wrong, you get out on that sort of feel. But yeah, there's a pretty good battle going on here, so it could go either way. I suspect we'll win, but you know, we have to really wait until the US stock opens. But yeah, so Andrew and Jason are beginning in 5 minutes. It should be quite good. Yeah, there's no reason to have lost a lot of money on that announcement, guys. It wasn't a huge move. If you're over leveraged, that's probably the bigger issue. I mean, there's definitely no reason to trade before an announcement. That's you know, it's something I do maybe 1 in 10 times. And if I hadn't, I would have bought the dip pretty much straight away when I saw it was a mixed result. Strong headline, weak internals. But yeah, thanks for tuning in. I'll let it go across to Andrew and Jason. If you have any questions, just send me a little PM. If you're watching this on YouTube, come across to Forex Signals. That's where you'll be able to catch me. I think the outro music while we wait for Andrew and Jason is going to be sad music today. We didn't make money. Alright guys, Andrew Jason coming on any second now, so good luck with your trades, keep an eye on it. If you're in some dollar yen here, it's definitely not whipping up strong at all, so you know, we're going to need a boost from the start of the US session to really get this above that 113 level. Otherwise stops at 112.40 might get hit here. Not gonna lie, it's doesn't look good. US yields have flipped over again. You see, they had a little recovery, then it made fresh lows. Probably dollar yen's gonna follow it to fresh lows. That's just likely.